Hello and welcome to Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first, we've got on the hazardous weather graphics, again, no advisories, watches, or warnings out for southern Alaska, the northern interior to the Arctic coast. Panhandle or out west over the Bering Sea, nothing but high pressure out that way, keeping the storminess off to the west or to the south for the next couple of days. And satellite imagery showing system south of the Panhandle, there with pushing another front up across Dixon Entrance, bringing some rain into the southern southeast coast, along with some clouds with some clearing over the northern Panhandle today. Also scattered loose clouds over the eastern half of the state from the Gulf there right up into areas of the Copper River Basin, and a narrow band of clouds with possible snow showers there through the central interior. Cloudy skies over the Fairbanks area, on up to the Brooks Range and the Arctic coast, with areas of clearing in there as well. More widespread clearing occurring from the Seward Peninsula and areas south of the Brooks Range all the way down into Bristol Bay. And not bad over the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, and it looks like some clouds over the central Aleutians. Brought a little bit of light rain and showers into the Adak-Atka area today, and then out to the west, next cloud band associated with a front that's just barely reaching the Komodorsky Islands. Otherwise, the system to the south spinning some moisture up into the central Aleutians, as we just saw in the satellite. Otherwise, high pressure, strong high pressure, making for very light winds and dry conditions there from the Chukchi Sea southward through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, right on down to the Pribilofs and the eastern Aleutians, Bristol Bay, mostly sunny skies, as well as much of the western interior. Eastern interior, partly sunny skies in areas, otherwise variably to mostly cloudy with some scattered areas of light snow and snow showers all the way down into mainly the western Alaska Range, possibly Kodiak Island, maybe the Copper River Basin, but basically dry over the northern Panhandle. But that front across the Queen Charlotte's pushing some moisture into the southern southeast coast. And we'll see tonight, still a chance of snow showers, but winds really diminish or continue to diminish for the Alaska Peninsula, with some scattered snow shower activity continuing, but much lighter than what you've seen the last couple of days on both counts. Interior, west side sees the clearest skies. Eastern interior will see the cloudy skies with still a chance of scattered snow showers or flurries. Kind of a widespread area there, anywhere from the North Gulf Coast northward to the eastern Arctic coast, and chance of scattered showers for the Panhandle as that front dissipates and just pushes off to the east into Canada. And then the high pressure out over the Bering Sea, keeping winds light, conditions dry with some clearing there. Fox Island's possibly seeing a mostly clear night tonight. Definitely the west coast, but that high keeping all the storms either out to the west toward Kamchatka Peninsula and directing them north into the Russian Far East, or holding them off to the south of the Aleutians. And that pattern holds through tomorrow. Again, some more moisture might slip on up in southeast flow there into the central Aleutians, maybe only resulting in some shower activity and isolated showers possible for the Shimiatu area. Otherwise, that's about it as far as any weather goes out that way. Mostly sunny skies again, the western part of the state, and maybe a few more clouds and some scattered snow showers over south central Alaska, mainly the Kenai Peninsula into the Talkeetnas, Chugach mountain areas, mountainous terrain, western Alaska Range. Mostly cloudy, chance of some scattered snow showers for the interior from the Alaska Range up to the Arctic coastal areas there. And North Gulf Coast looking pretty good. Dry conditions with maybe a few sun breaks during the day into the northern Panhandle, and better chance of some shower activity over the southern southeast coast, with another front pushing into the Queen Charlottes that may push enough moisture or nudge it northward across the Dixon Entrance area into the southern southeast coast. Otherwise, Kodiak Island, just a risk of a shower. Most of that may stay off the coast. Sunniest conditions will be over toward Chillicothe Strait in the southwest part of the island. But still breezy, northwest winds 15 to 25 miles an hour over the Alaska Peninsula, but mostly clear skies in that area as well. And that'll extend westward to Atka Island. And then the outlook for Tuesday, high pressure shifts eastward to the ridge right along from the Bering Strait down into the Alaska Peninsula. That's going to allow that front out to the west to push some wind and rain into the western Bering Sea and the central Aleutian areas. Otherwise, some rain and snow showers over the northern panhandle, chance of snow showers over the Alaska Range, and still a chance over the eastern interior. Excuse me. But mostly sunny there over south central Alaska. In fact, sunshine from sunrise to sunset for areas of the Susitna-Manuska Valley. Partly sunny skies for the Kenai Peninsula. Maybe mostly sunny there. Partly sunny for the Copper River Basin. Definitely mostly sunny for the northern interior, Arctic coast, North Slope, all the way down into the Bering Sea. Pribilofs, mostly clear skies. A few clouds there for St. Lawrence Island, mostly clear skies for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, with, again, light winds, picking up a little bit there for the central Aleutians ahead of that front, but the stronger winds will be up to the north of the Aleutian chain, out over the west and northwest Bering Sea areas. Lows tonight in the mid-30s for the southeast coast, 15 to 20 in the Copper River Basin, anywhere from 5 below to 10 above for the Kuskokwim Valley, 10 to 15, Bristol Bay, upper 20s, Kodiak Island, in the 20s for south central Alaska. Highs tomorrow, a little cooler, upper 30s for south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, near 40 for the Copper River Basin, mid-40s, Prince William Sound and the Seward area, as well as Yakutat, and mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, mid-30s Kodiak Island, otherwise west of the Alaska Range from Bristol Bay northward in the 20s. Lows 5 to 10 for the Kuskokwim Valley and near 10 for Bristol Bay on Tuesday morning, with teens for the Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, lower to mid-20s for the Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet, and in the 30s again for the Panhandle, followed by highs, upper 40s to lower 50s for the southeast coast. And a little warmer on Tuesday than tomorrow for south central Alaska. Call it 40 to 45, 46 for example at Valdez, near 40 for Kodiak. Lower 30s for Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Valley. Up to the north, lows 5 to 15 in the central and eastern interior. Still below zero for the Seward Peninsula and below zero for the Kobuk Valley on out to the Arctic coast. Highs near zero for the Arctic coast. 25 to 35 eastern interior, 15 to 20 out to the west, and about the same for the lows Tuesday morning. Highs lower to mid-30s eastern interior, near 20 for the Seward Peninsula, and above zero now for the Arctic coast, and out to the west near zero for the lows tonight for the coast, otherwise lower 30s for the Aleutians, followed by highs tomorrow near 30 for the Pribilofs, mid to upper 30s eastern Aleutians, lower 40s for the central Aleutians, lower 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. Looking at highs on Tuesday afternoon, near freezing now for the Pribilofs, near 40 for the eastern Aleutians. Actually, all the Aleutians 38 to 43, but still highs in the lower 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, pretty nice here across the southeast coast. Mostly VFR, same thing for the Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast. Into south central Alaska, Kodiak, much of the western interior. Some IFR along the Alaska Range, also up over areas of the eastern part of the state. North Slope Arctic coast, mostly marginal. A little bit of IFR here over the northern Bering Sea. May slip on into Gamble early on. And then marginal VFR Pribilofs on down to the Alaska Peninsula, followed by VFR. And then some IFR there out towards Chimiana too. That slides a little bit to the east, not too far, barely reaching Kiska Island. Marginal VFR to Atka Island, still marginal for the Pribilofs, but VFR. Marginal VFR burning off there for the Alaska Peninsula in the afternoon, eastern Aleutians, all of the western interior, eastern Bering Sea, Bering Strait, and southern Alaska here, south of the Alaska Range, all VFR, Kodiak, Panhandle, VFR. Marginal VFR, though, north of the Alaska Range, all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. And for Tuesday morning, still a lot of VFR here for the southeast coast, as well as in the Gulf of Alaska. Kodiak, maybe some marginal VFR along and just north of the Alaska Range, and another band up here along the Yukon River. as well as yet another area there along the eastern and central Arctic coast, North Slope. Some IFR possible here for the Bering Strait down to St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, really nice conditions here for the east and southeast Bering Sea. Aleutians, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Marginal for the central Aleutians, from about AKwx westward, look for IFR. And then with that frontal system here edging eastward in the afternoon, IFR will definitely push across to AKwx, marginal to Atka, but staying really nice here. VFR over the remainder of the Bering Sea and into the Alaska Peninsula, mostly VFR over interior Alaska, all the way up to the Arctic coast now. Maybe a little bit of marginal VFR here in the Tanana Valley, north of the Alaska Range. That's just a possibility. Areas of probably won't be solid. Otherwise, looking good there for the southeast coast. Passes tomorrow, though. Anatuva-Kanatagan, another marginal day for both Anatuva-Kanatagan. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR at times, VFR at other times. Same forecast for rainy. And for windy, mostly marginal tomorrow. And Isabel, mostly marginal, especially on the northern entrance. About the same for Mentasta, occasional marginal VFR. And Tanita, though, VFR. And moving on to, let's see, Portage. Good VFR tomorrow there, either approach. And Chilkoot and White, VFR. Looking at the freezing levels here at the surface, a little to the north tomorrow morning, north of the North Gulf Coast, north of the Panhandle, and then down along the Alaska Peninsula, still south of the Pribilofs, but north of all the Aleutians, and then 2,000 to 4,000 feet coming in over the western part of the Aleutian chain. And for icing, nothing significant expected out here over the Bering Sea, the Aleutians, western interior up into the Arctic. Maybe some possible light icing, light rime icing, maybe mixed here, but very light areas of there for the Yukon Flats down in toward the eastern Alaska Range. And same thing here for the central, southeast coast, central and northern Panhandle. Otherwise, no significant icing expected. And for the jet stream, upper level trough right through the central interior, so southerly winds, 65 knots here, up to 75 knots out of the southeast over the Panhandle, a huge upper level high there near the Great Slave, Great Bear Lakes. And then north-northwesterlies, 75, picking up to about 100 knots as they blow across the Alaska Peninsula, and then lighter out to the west. And at 9,000 feet, high pressure out over the Bering Sea, keeping storminess well back to the west. Northerly flow here along the west coast, actually inland over the western part of the state, 40 to 50 knots, strongest along the Alaska Peninsula. Light under the trough axis here over the central eastern interior. Not too bad over the Panhandle as well. 3,000 feet, light winds southeast coast, light winds over the interior. Northerlies 30 to 40 knots here coming down across Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Alaska Peninsula. 50 knotters coming into the central Aleutians there. And for turbulence, moderate turbulence, southwest interior, Kodiak Island, western Alaska Range, as well as the Aleutians, smooth elsewhere.
Many miles long, from 1 to 100 feet high, traveling at 400 miles per hour. This ocean monster is known as a tsunami, and it can wreak havoc on coastal populations and landscapes. A tsunami is a series of ocean waves caused by any large and sudden disturbance of the sea surface. Tsunamis can be generated by landslides, volcanic eruptions, or even meteorite impacts in the ocean. But they are most often caused by an earthquake where there's a sudden displacement of the ocean floor. When that happens, there's a transfer of energy from the sea floor to the ocean, causing waves on the surface to radiate outward in all directions. In deep waters, these waves may not even be detectable. But when the tsunami enters shallower waters, the wave speed slows and its height increases. The water along the coast may recede noticeably. A large wall of turbulent water, called a bore, may also form. When the tsunami hits, it may come ashore like a fast-rising flood and strike with devastating force. The series of waves may continue for hours. first one may not be the last or the largest. For your safety, know the potential warning signs of an incoming tsunami. A strong earthquake that causes difficulty standing. A rapid rise or fall of the water along the coast. A loud ocean roar. When you're in a coastal area, it's important to keep alert for messages from local officials, such as lifeguards, police, the U.S. Tsunami Warning Centers, and NOAA All Hazards Radio. If you find yourself in a location of a tsunami strike, here's what you need to do to stay safe. Keep calm. Walk or run to higher ground, 100 feet above sea level or 1 mile inland. Do not drive. Keep roads open for emergency vehicles. If you cannot move to higher ground, use the stairs to get to the 3rd floor or higher in a sturdy building. Follow all instructions from local officials and stay out of coastal areas until authorities issue an all clear. Tsunamis can strike any coastline in the world and can affect locations thousands of miles away from where they formed. They may be uncommon, but the devastation they cause makes them a deadly force in nature. For more information on tsunamis, go to the following sites.
Tsunami, a killer wave, speeding across the ocean at 400 miles an hour. It smashes into land, destroying everything in its path. Tsunamis do not have a season, but they can strike any coast at any time. If one forms close to the shore, the shaking of the earth and a loud roar may warn of its approach. But when a tsunami forms across the ocean, it can take hours to reach the shore, enough time to warn people to move to higher land. Over the past 20 years, NOAA has developed DART, a real-time monitoring system that provides data for forecasting tsunamis. The DART systems have been deployed in earthquake-prone areas throughout the ocean, including the Pacific and Indian basins. A DART system combines a surface buoy and a sensor on the ocean floor. This sensor detects changes in water pressure and seismic activity and transmits the data back to the surface. If these changes indicate a tsunami may form, the buoy signals an alert via satellite to the tsunami warning centers in Alaska and Hawaii. Back at the centers, scientists plug the data into pre-existing models. These models predict the height, the arrival time, and the coastal locations that the tsunami will hit. Watches and warnings are issued to the affected communities so preparations can begin. Today, 47 DART stations are positioned all around the world, ready to detect and warn coastal communities about the next potential tsunami. With the DART system and tsunami warning centers in place, we are now better prepared to predict the killer wave before it strikes.
December 26, 2004. What began as an undersea earthquake in the Indian Ocean ended as the most deadly tsunami in recorded history, with nearly 240,000 lives lost. This was a devastating wake-up call to coastal communities and tsunami research. Prior to this event, only 6 of NOAA's Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunami, or DART, buoys were in place. Scientists could only predict tsunami arrival times, not flood potential. And there was not a global tsunami warning system. Today, 10 years later, we can tell a different story. U.S. and international coastlines are far better prepared for such a catastrophe, thanks in large part to research and technology developed at the NOAA Center for Tsunami Research at Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory. NOAA's DART array is now complete, with 39 buoys operated by the National Weather Service's National Data Buoy Center. Along with 21 international buoys, this array can measure a tsunami wave as small as 1 centimeter in the open ocean and provide these data in real time to forecast when a tsunami may hit the coast and how much flooding there will be. NOAA scientists and engineers are currently testing the 4th-generation DART buoy that will be able to measure local tsunamis as well as distant ones. Flooding forecast models incorporate local topography and historical tsunami data in order to more accurately predict exactly how a tsunami might behave when it reaches shore. NOAA has 75 site-specific models that can provide high-resolution flooding forecasts for effective response and mitigation during a tsunami event. NOAA has gathered data from every tsunami since 2004 to improve its forecast models. Today, it operates the world's only real-time tsunami flooding forecast system using DART data to accurately compute flooding forecasts. The NOAA Tsunami Warning Centers make tsunami data available on the internet and issue advisories, watches, and warnings through the Emergency Alert System and via NOAA weather radios. While it is impossible to prevent a tsunami, we are now much better prepared to detect them and predict their paths and impacts, so those in coastal communities can take the steps necessary to safely protect themselves.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Moving into the marine forecast now for the south coast of the Panhandle. Northeast winds 15 to 20 knots for the day on Monday. Let me back that up one there. Okay, Monday on the south coast, south winds 20 knots along Prince of Wales Island. And for the central coast, east-northeast winds 10 to 15 knots. And the north coast, north to northeast winds at 10 knots. Lynn Canal, north winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Stevens Passage, northeast winds 10 knots. And Clarence Strait, southeast winds at 20 knots, seas up to 7 feet. And then they'll swing around to the north on Tuesday for Clarence Strait and Stevens Passage for north at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Lynn Canal, north winds 20 knots. And for the south coast, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots. And for the central coast, north to northeast winds 15 knots and 10 to 15 knot winds on the north coast. For Prince William Sound, Monday, north winds 20 knots. Western North Gulf Coast, north winds 15 knots, or north winds 25 knots. Eastern North Gulf Coast, east to north winds 15 to 20 knots. Good gales for the Barren Islands, northwest winds at 40 knots. Same thing for Kamishak Bay, but more of a westerly direction on those 40-knot winds. Cook Inlet, north winds 15 knots. And for Tuesday, Cook Inlet, north winds 15 to 20 knots, northwest at 30 for Kamishak Bay. Barren Islands still carrying a gale warning out for 35-knot winds with 8-foot seas. North Gulf Coast, north winds 20 knots. Prince William Sound, north winds 15 knots. And for Kodiak Island on Monday, northwest winds 25 to 35 knots. Alaska Peninsula, north winds 15 to 25 knots. And Bristol Bay looking at north winds at 20 knots, seas at around 4 feet. And for Tuesday, Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, northwest winds 25 knots. And the Alaska Peninsula, on the Bering Sea side, winds will be northeast to 20 knots. On the Pacific side, north to northwest at 20 knots. And Bristol Bay, north winds 20 knots. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, north to east winds at 15 to 20 knots. Central Aleutians, east winds 25 to 30 knots. And for the Western Aleutians, east-southeast winds at about 30 knots. For Tuesday, gale warnings from Kiska to Shimia, southeast winds increasing to 35 knots. Otherwise, for the Central Aleutians, east winds or east-southeasterlies at 30 knots. And for the Eastern Aleutians, east-northeast winds 20 to 30 knots with 5 to 11-foot seas. For the Kuskokwim Delta coast on Monday, north winds 20 knots. For the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island, variable winds 10 knots under high pressure with seas not too bad at 3 feet. Yukon Delta coast to St. Lawrence Island, winds are north at 15 knots, and Norton Sound northwest at 15. And for Tuesday, Norton Sound north at 15. St. Lawrence Island really laying down now, north winds at 10 knots. And the Yukon Delta coast north at 15. Kuskokwim Delta coast, small or brisk wind advisories, north winds 25 knots. St. Matthew Island's got the strongest winds out that way, east at 30 knots and about 20 knots from the east for the Pribilofs. For the eastern and Beaufort Sea coast for Monday, west northwest winds at 10 to 15 knots, and for the central and western coast, winds will be west at 10 knots, and for the Chukchi Sea, north to northwest breezes at 5 to 15 knots. And for Tuesday, from Wells to Cape Thompson, variable winds at 10 knots, Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort south at 20, central and western Arctic coast, winds will be south at 15 knots. The eastern Beaufort Sea coast, variable winds at 10 knots. For tonight, again, chance of snow, flurries, and fog, possibly there for the eastern Arctic coast. Into the eastern north slope of the Brooks Range, chance of some scattered snow showers over the eastern interior. Otherwise, chance of isolated showers for the Panhandle, otherwise dry, and strong high pressure out over the Bering Sea, again, keeps frontal systems to the west, at least through tomorrow, and also to the south. Tomorrow about the same with the cloudy skies and the chance of precipitation over the central and eastern part of the state. Best chance of sunshine out west there, and that extends well into the Bering Sea. Otherwise, chance of showers over the southern Panhandle, pretty dry to the north. Same thing for the North Gulf coastal areas. And the outlook for Tuesday, strong high pressure shifts eastward, so that'll allow that front out west to push into the western Bering and to the central Aleutians with some rain reaching even Atka Island. Otherwise, mostly sunny skies, south central Alaska, scattered snow showers northeastern interior and the northern Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.